Hi, this is Maggie, and welcome back to Leadership Insights, to another inspiring episode. Today, you'll be learning about the concept of flow, this magical moment when time seems to stand still and you're performing effortlessly. Jean-Philippe Jacques is looking back at 30 years of meditation and mindfulness practice and leadership roles in academia and in the humanitarian sector. He's explaining us the science behind flow and meditation. And you will walk away with a few practical tips that you can implement right away. Enjoy this episode. You're listening to Leadership's Insights, Navigating Career and Life. I am Maggie Rombach, your host, bringing inspiring stories and practical advice on leadership, career development, and work-life balance. So welcome to Leadership's Insights, brought to you by Maggie's Mindset Mastery Academy. And today, as always, I'm super excited about my guest. Today, I have Jean-Philippe Jacques with me. And actually, I had the pleasure to recently accomplish an 8-week training with Jean-Philippe. It's called Flow at Work. It's quite innovative. And it perfectly fits this month's theme of flow and focus that I'll be zooming in on my newsletter. So with that, and with no further ado, I give you the word, Jean-Philippe. Tell us first a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what's your mission?
Yes, hello Maggie. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to share and explore with you the concepts and the principles and the issues related to flow and mindfulness at work. Where do I come from? A long time ago, I used to do research in molecular biology, first at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and then I moved to University of Geneva. And at some point, I consider, moving on and quitting the academic world. And then I moved to public health and health training with organizations like Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. And along the way, I had started meditation for my inner balance, personal inner balance in 1995. And then I considered developing this activity on a professional level. And this I started in 2009. So since then, I've been offering and developing mindfulness and flow-based interventions. First for people, particular people like issues, mostly health issues, and then for corporate worlds.
Wow, I hadn't realized because Médecins Sans Frontières, it's like ICRC's best brothers. I hadn't realized we had that connection. And also 95, so you've been on this for 30 years. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yes. Well, 1995, it's when my first daughter was born. I'm the happy father of three daughters, being, 30, 25, and 11-year-old. And as you probably know, being a father or mother is quite challenging. It's the most beautiful job ever, aside from, the professional track, I would say. And
It's
that was the incentive. That was the trigger for me to start Tai Chi and meditation, actually.
Yeah, it's a good moment to
Yeah.
start calming the
Maybe
brain and
also,
calming yourself.
yeah, also I like to add that sports was really a good motivation for me. And as young adults and a teenager, I was practicing kayaking, and I won several championships in this. And when later on I moved to flow and mindfulness, I realized how important it was to have been exposed to the pressure of competition.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of the analogies of what competitive sports can bring to work and to
Yeah,
leadership. Because
yeah,
I didn't win huge competitions, but I competed in horse jumping. And I could also totally see how having a calm mind is needed, because actually the horse picks up your stress. So if you're stressed, the horse will be stressed. So you kind of, it's really almost a necessity to manage to be calm when you horse
yes.
ride.
Yes, yes, yes. Maybe also I'd like to add that when I was working for MSF, Doctors Without Borders, uh, quite often I would say, hey, let's pause, let's take some time. And of course, we're working on emergency issues, but the key element here is to just do nothing, pause for a couple minutes and reflect and step back and see how we feel. And I was playing with that and telling them, listen, are you sure I am the right guy? Because I keep telling you, let's do nothing. Let's pause for a couple of minutes. And then you want to act and, save lives and move on faster and faster. And I am the opposite.
But that's great. And I know that many of my listeners are from the humanitarian field. I don't know if they're people from Doctors Without Borders. If they are, welcome. But I think that's really important to hear for humanitarians because, as you say, we're so used to just go and help.
Yeah.
And it's so important to pause because then we can actually help better. So, yeah, I
Yes,
think it's really
yes,
good.
yes, yes. Yeah. And actually, I really got used to pausing. It's like adding salt on pepper, in the food. Like pausing within a meeting or within any activity brings extra texture, extra flavor, and it's essential to me. It's been essential for a few years now.
Great. Thanks for sharing. And I think that's already a practical tip for our listeners. Just pause sometimes in meetings. That's a
Yeah.
great tip. So let's get a bit deeper into the topic of flow and the link of flow and mindfulness. So maybe to kick it off, could you explain a little bit more the concept of flow? Where is it coming from and what does it entail?
Yeah. Huh. Well, first of all, the wording is tricky. In English, we prefer to talk about the zone, but speaking about the zone in French is a terrible wording. So, je suis dans la zone. It means everything is terrible. So it doesn't fit. It doesn't go along well. So we prefer to talk about flow, which is an English term, also used, in the literature. But so first of all, and so what are we talking about? We are talking about the seminal work of Csikszentmihalyi. This guy was a psychologist in the late 80s, and he started questioning issues related to um, like when you're watching like a sportsman, like a tennisman, a tenniswoman, a golf player, or a soccer player, football player, whatever. Sometimes these people, they feel like they're like amazingly good for whatever they're doing, as if they had eyes behind their head, as if everything was just so easy, so fluid, so evident. And of course they score, and of course it's so beautiful just to watch them in that state of flow. And this is what it's the definition. That's the very first definition of flow. It seems to you as if you were the right person, the right time, the right context, and you were doing the best you can and delivering, whatever you can, but so easily, so natural, and you don't see time flying when you're in the state of flow.
So it's basically, yeah, time flies. You don't see the time and it's easy and just, yeah, almost like magic, if you will.
Yes, sort of, sort of. And so Csikszentmihalyi in the late 80s, he questioned hundreds, literally hundreds, and then thousands, by the way, of people about what it means for them to be in the state of flow. And he came up with parameters, with variables that are, relevant to that state of flow. And he said, hey, this is not something only for the elite. Everybody can work on, creating, triggering that state of flow. And so that was the start. That was the start of a big move, inspired from also positive psychology and the concept of happiness. What is it that makes you feel happy? This is not something shallow. This is not something about like, oh yes, I have a box of chocolate and I feel happy. It goes much deeper than that.
And I guess that's also where it starts connecting with mindfulness, because it's in the present moment, right? So you can only be
Yeah,
happy now. So the
yeah,
more you can trigger the flow mode and be really in the present moment, I guess that's where the concept starts meeting. Would that be fair to say?
absolutely. It's about becoming more and more aware of the present moment experience. Oh, wow, I feel good. Oh, I feel good, I act good, I think good, and I move on. Yes.
You know, I was thinking about that preparing for our interview. And also this morning, actually went horse riding. And when we finished the hour and we're kind of calming down the horses, I was just like, I don't know how this, I mean, it was really this magic moment where I don't know how that hour went past, because yeah, you're just completely in that flow and in the moment. And yeah,
Mm.
it is. And maybe you can talk a bit more about the ingredients, these principles, because one of them has also to do with just enough challenge, right? So it has
Yeah,
to be triggering you
yeah.
that you want to perform. It's so yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you for asking, huh? First, maybe I'll step back a little. Yes, there is individual flow, creating proper conditions for being in the individual flow, and then there's relational flow. And sometimes with animals, with human beings, with other livings, human livings, uh, um, then we feel connected, and we feel connected also with nature. And so there's different layers, different ways of cultivating this state of flow. And to go back to your question, yes, the objective has to be very clearly identified. And it's not about reaching this objective at all cost. It's about knowing in what direction to go. And then the task at work, and like which way am I going there? How am I going to go from point A to point B? And then the challenge. If it's too easy, then we start getting bored, and it's not good for activating the flow. And it's if it is too difficult, if it is too challenging, then we start feeling anxious. So it's about finding the right balance between anxiety and boredom, and then we can adjust constantly. And one last ingredient I'd like to mention here in that context is about the feedback. If we get feedback, then we can adjust. If we do not get feedback coming from us and or coming from others, then it becomes very difficult to feel comfortable with whatever task we are involved in. So flow is um, not accessible. Maybe one more challenge or one more parameter to mention today is about making sure we're not disturbed or distracted, because we're so much solicited, we're so much connected with networks and media and everything, and being disrupted will not allow creating proper condition for flow activation. So the strong note here is please step away for 10 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever makes sense to you, from distraction, from networks, and you will do yourself some good.
Thank you. That's already some good ingredients, and I'll summarize them for the episode summary so people can also see them visually. So let's assume, all these criteria in place. So it's almost like switching on a magic trigger to go into a state of flow.
Mm,
How are those ingredients or the approach to flow different to, let's say, classical time management? As you just said, distraction, multitasking, these things they hurt, right?
mm,
And things like let's, have chunks of work time, switch off notifications. So I think that's the more classical time management. So
mm,
how does flow, and particularly flow linked with mindfulness, go beyond the classical time management?
mm. Interesting question, huh? I would say it has to, yeah, it involves a good connection with not only with tasks, but also with feeling tones, with emotions, with the subtle aspect in us that makes us sparkle. that makes us be curious and feeling committed to whatever tasks is at work. So exploring the feeling tones is a key element here.
That just triggered something what you said for me as well. Yeah, being connected with your emotions and not only the task. Listeners that have been following me for a while know that I'm exploring the whole notion of transition these days. And
Mm,
another element I'm exploring is this whole on the how. I feel like generally speaking, we put too much emphasis on the what,
mm,
kind of what do I do? What is the task? And I think there's a need to be more in the how. And when you go to the how, you have the whole emotions and all of that coming
mm,
up. And I'm
mm,
just realizing now that there is actually a connection with the work around mindfulness and flow.
mm,
So let's say, we're all convinced this is amazing. We want to trigger our flow. We want to go into that state. Can
mm,
you share two or three really practical small things
mm.
that listeners can do today to just try it out and see if they can get themselves into this amazing state of magic
Yes.
work time?
Well, then, in order to answer your question, I might have to explore a bit with you the principles of neurobiology. That is, flow is also about activating the right neural networks. There is flow networks in some sort and saboteur networks. We can activate or we can sabotage. We can switch in either one. And to go in the right direction, to go and activate the proper networks, to get rid of all stress hormones and stress signals, then it's good maybe to just cultivate mindfulness and pause for a few, a short time and step back from any commitment with acting, just pausing and breathing. For example, cardiac coherency breathing rhythms. That is 5 second, 5 second for 1, 2, 3 minutes. So you can play with that. Whenever you feel stressed, you have like a big meeting or some challenging issue at stake, then maybe decide on purpose, very intentionally, to pause for 3 minutes and do some uh, cardiac coherency breathing, and also focusing on, by the way, okay, I'm going to this meeting. What is my objective? Where would I like to go? What is my intention? And then reflect on that and see which way you would feel comfortable using to go in that direction. Mhm. Yes, and also maybe explore a bit the motivation for presenting your work, sharing your, the way you consider the situation. Is it some sort of internal motivation, like, exploring with you and with others, or is it some sort of external motivation, feeling right at all costs, for example? This is completely different, and the posture is different, and it will activate different neural networks. So practically, you want to get rid of stress-induced hormones like adrenaline, cortisol, just a tiny bit, but not too much. And you want to boost the production of dopamine and serotonin. And for that, it's all about reflecting on your motivation, as I was mentioning it before. So, what makes me feel happy and joyful about the meeting, about the situation?
So really focusing on the positive. I really like that. That's really practical tips. And I also like the link to the hormones and what's triggered in the body. And that actually, I have a follow-up question there. Because one thing is the hormonal reaction, right? But
Yeah,
then also it's the wavelength, right, of your brain
yeah,
frequency. So
yeah,
also when you slow down, that changes the wavelength. So maybe you can talk a
yeah,
bit more to that
yeah,
because that triggers more creative wavelengths if you
yeah.
calm down, right?
Yes. Well, maybe you've noticed, but some of your best ideas came during your free time when you were, hacking or playing or sleeping or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you get a sparkle. Oh, yes, this is excellent. This is a wonderful idea. Same with meditation, huh? And when we are not in a stress mode, we will switch from beta wavelength to alpha and then theta or delta wavelength. And this is actually the signature, the brain signature of the way you are, the state you are in. And this is very good news. If you had an EEG helmet on your skull, then you would notice the change in terms of electroencephalogram. And so, yes, there is a signature for flow activity and flow induction. Absolutely.
That's great. So basically, because what I'm getting a lot talking to colleagues and other people is this kind of like, this is great, but we just don't have the time. Life is so busy. And,
Mm-hmm.
so um, I think the more we can convince people that this is not really a nice to have, but this is, first of all, actually with, as you already explained, with relatively small things, like even just pausing for 2-3 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
that can already have a big effect. But
Yeah.
it's also actually a way for more efficiency. So is it fair to say that the more classical mindfulness is perhaps more focused towards stress reduction, and the flow angle is on top adding this element of efficiency, and actually, because once you're in that magical state of flow, I mean, you'd assume you're more efficient as well if you work in that state. Is that fair, or is that pushing it too far?
Well, okay. Mindfulness is sort of the baseline. It's some sort of foundation. Um, Making sure we have our capacity to focus. And that goes through mindfulness practice. Uh, our attention is like very, very precious. And we tend nowadays to go all over the place because of so many, inputs and solicitations and triggers. And we get solicitations every second. So this creates disruption and difficulty to focus. So we have to practice. It's like brushing your teeth, or having a shower, or just taking care of yourself, and also taking care of your body. Same thing. Just feeling comfortable with your body and feeling comfortable with the situation, whatever it is. So that goes through mindfulness. Mindfulness of sensation, body sensations, mindfulness of feeling tones and emotions, and mindfulness of thoughts. And then we move on to action. So then it's more like the two sides of the same coin. And mindfulness will put us in front of some suffering facts, suffering situations, suffering realities. What is the meaning behind this suffering and our human condition? So it can be a bit difficult, but it's part of our lives. And flow is more about the bright side of who we are, getting the best of the situation and activating our psychological energy the best we can.
So is there a shortcut to flow? Can I avoid the suffering and just go straight to flow, or I really have to do my full homework and do a bit of both?
No, I don't think there's shortcuts. I think it's about radical acceptation of the reality as it is. And sometimes it's bright, and other times it's darker. And there's both constantly. We get to work, we're happy, life is wonderful, and then we get a telephone call, or we get some sort of distracting email, and then we feel terrible. And so it's about recovering faster and being able to be stronger with what is life
It's really
as it
about
is, as opposed.
resilience, basically.
Yes, it has to do with
Yeah.
resilience.
And I just asked it as a provocative question because, I'm trying to put myself into listener's shoes thinking, great, I want a shortcut. But actually, that brings us back to our sports examples. It's the same when you do competitive sports or any sport seriously. There's no shortcut. You cannot show up to a marathon without
Yeah,
building up to it and getting the basics in place. So I guess it's the same for this. You cannot get into magical flow by
yeah,
just showing up. You'll have to go through the whole habit of getting
Yeah.
into mindfulness, doing your homework, creating new habits, and then you'll get there.
Yeah, yeah. And sports is good because if my motivation is to win at all cost, I will lose my motivation quite shortly. And if, of course, it's important to feel good and to get a good time or whatever it is. But if my motivation is to feel comfortable and experience joy in the activity, then the focus will completely switch.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, that was already super rich. We have two more little segments to this podcast. Before we go there, is there anything else that you're really burning to share with listeners on flow and mindfulness and all we've talked about so far?
Mm. Well, I think the the most precious element is us. The most sacred element is us. uh, And if we take care of ourselves, then we will organize a strategy. We will come up with a good strategy. So let's dedicate time for taking care of who we are, not only our body but also our soul. And then the flow and mindfulness are very, very powerful entry doors for that. So, whether it's that sort of activity or painting or, gardening or whatever, if it's done with respect to who we are, and if that allows us to cultivate the best part of who we are, then this is priceless.
Wow. And that comes also back to this old image of, you have to put your oxygen mask on first, because then when you're looked after yourself, then you're probably also better placed to look after others around you.
Yes, yes. And this, most of the time, we learn the hard way.
Yes.
Uh, Sometimes we go too far, and that's when it's good to pause. And, hey, wait a minute, where am I? And I think there is no shortcut for suffering. There is ways to look at the experience in the present moment and adjust as soon as possible. But there is no shortcut to actually being exposed to realities that triggers suffering.
Yeah. And that's so true what you're saying there, because I had my fair share of suffering. I had two burnouts and a serious health issue. And part of bringing this content to my listeners is also because, I almost want to shake all of you listening here up to start taking this seriously and look after yourself before you hit the wall full speed like I did. And because, funnily enough, I was introduced to mindfulness at work through a fantastic leadership training 7 years ago. And I really liked it. And I was like, this is so nice. I should do that. And then it always remained a nice to have. And I barely did it. And it really took me to hit my head full speed against the wall again to start taking it seriously. And I've been seriously on it since October. So I don't have 30 years. I have more like 30 weeks. But I can totally see the benefits already. So I would really encourage anybody listening out there, at least try it out, and don't try it out for a day. Try it out for, I don't know, what would be a good period? 8 weeks? That's why those trainings are 8 weeks. How long would people
Yes.
need to try to start seeing effects?
Well, the standard training time is 8 weeks because we really then see the impact, the positive impact on our practices, on whatever we do. Not only reading a book is not good enough. We read the book, we know what is good, what we should do, but we end up doing nothing. And the 8 week program with the group dynamic and all the exercises and the activities is a good timing, is a good frame. Also, we offer shorter, workshops, like on 3 weeks and 2 or 3 weeks. And these are also good formats to give you a hint, to give you some sort of an idea about where to go and why and how.
Okay, that's great. And we'll get back there at the wrap up because I'd like you to tell a bit more how people could actually get really into that very practically, but we keep that for the end. One bit I'd love to also hear from you. So I'm exploring the whole notion of transitions, reinventions, because I noticed almost everybody these days has changed their paths, their careers at some point. And you explained your jump from, what was it, microbiology to humanitarian to, I mean, it's just amazing. So in those transitions,
Yeah.
how, I mean, what was the one big thing you learned? And also maybe how did your mindfulness, your meditation help you through those transition to manage better? And by the
Yeah.
way, transition, I would also define having kids or like one kid every 10 years. I guess that just keeps growing the transitions. You know, that's also a huge change in one's life. It's not necessarily just a work transition. It's like, it could be becoming a parent. So
Yeah.
what helped? What could be a tip?
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid this is not going to be, how should I say, original. It has to do with love,
Mm.
loving ourselves, loving our dear little planet, and loving others. And these are very, very strong entry doors, huh? For
Mm.
a start. And also respect, and also honoring who we are, and connecting with all our creativity, our capacity for resilience, of course, but also to move on, to bounce back, like you mentioned, resilience. And it also involves stepping back. When there is, tough decisions to be made, stepping back is very, very, for me at least, is very, very critical. And I will go in the nature for a couple days and, enjoy being connected with the nature and stepping back from, day-to-day activities. And I organize for that professionally and family wise, how to step back. And I always find this very, very useful. And very old Indian traditions used to do that when they do vision quests. This is like activating not ordinary states of consciousness that will allow coming up with bright ideas, quote unquote. And I mean, there's many ways to activate these non-ordinary states of consciousness, and flow is one way.
I like that, because that brings us back to what you said before, how you were the guy at MSF who would say like, okay, let's not rush, let's pause. And I guess it's the same when you go into a transition, whether it's a career transition or another transition, the tendency might be becoming stressed and wanting to rush and go forward. But actually, what I
Yeah,
hear you say is to rather really consciously, intentionally pause
yeah.
and reconnect, and then from that place to go look what's next.
Yes, yes, yes. And then there's a saying that goes in French. Maybe you can help me for translation. And it's also a feeling. Like, par exemple, dans une situation, il y a ce que j'appelle le passage en force. It's like forcing my way.
Hmm.
Forcing my way will allow me to go to step two from step one, but then eventually it's a dead end. And it's really critical not to force anything. And it does not mean to do nothing. It means to be extremely powerful and extremely centered and rooted in who I am and my values and my vision. And pausing allows me to share these without forcing anything. And I've noticed that when I pause, well, the capacity of interacting with others is upgraded in many, many ways. And also we switch in a servant leadership posture, which can be extremely useful and inviting for people to share their perspective, their ideas.
That's nice. And I mean, you might have heard it. There is a really good book on that whole topic on transitions. It's actually called Transitions. It's by William Bridges. And what one framework he talks about is really the notion that they're an ending and we have to close something old consciously, ending it.
Mm,
Then there's a neutral zone, and only then is a new beginning. And the neutral zone is actually the messy bits, the reconnecting bit. But and he really recommends to spend enough time in the neutral zone,
mm,
to really consciously spend time in the neutral zone and accept that it's really messy most of the time. But only there the clarity emerges to then be able to fully embrace the new beginning.
Yeah, yes. Resilience is about having the capacity, building the capacity to stay in that uncomfortable zone. Absolutely.
Wow, that's been really deep. Thanks so much,
Mm.
Jean-Philippe.
Yes. Thank you
If you're
very much.
ready, we have one more bit, which is one of my favorite bits, which I call the quick fire burst questions,
Yeah.
where I'll be throwing a handful of questions at you, and I challenge you to answer with one word or, sometimes two words.
Mm. Okay.
Ready to go?
Yes, let's go.
Here we go. So could you describe your leadership style in one word?
Mm. Serving, serving.
Nice. What's the key to successful teamwork?
Diversity.
One must-read book.
Um, wow, there is so many. That's a difficult one. I think poetry is very powerful,
Mm.
and Khalil Gibran is it's old, but it's still good. The Prophet.
Okay, I'll have to look that up. I'm extending my book list based on those interviews. It's amazing.
Mhm.
It's nice. What type of dream job would you do if it wasn't your current one?
Mm. Well, my current job is a dream job. It's any job with authentic connections.
Mm, I like that. So, what would be your preferred superpower, like flying, time traveling, whatever it might be?
Mm. Considering the context, I think it has to do with creativity, being
Mm,
creative.
nice. And what are you most grateful for?
Oh, for life.
Good. So look, usually I ask the closing questions of what you would recommend to your 18-year-old self or any professional that is just starting out. Maybe we quickly touch on that and then we'll talk a bit more practical things. So what would be like one tip you would give your 18-year-old self or your 11-year-old, maybe she's a bit too young, but like your kids or somebody else who's just getting started right now?
Yeah. One tip is about enjoying life and be truly yourself, the best you can, and establish strong, powerful, authentic connections. Alone, we go nowhere.
Mm. So true. Excellent. Thanks so much. So, assuming that all the listeners are now completely excited about being more mindful and wanting to have this magic trigger to get into flow, can you just share a few things that your organization, Resource Mindfulness, is doing concretely that people either, maybe based in Geneva, but also listening in from somewhere else, where could people get started if they're interested to explore this deeper?
Yeah, we are a small, a small entity of 8 people, and we offer a broad variety of, trainings having to do with flow and mindfulness, and it has to do with education, with schools, with teachers, with psychologists, with people concerned with health issues, with leaders, with corporate world. There is a broad variety of trainings we offer, and they all relate to flow, mindfulness, and team cohesion. And it's a wonderful adventure for people coming. The feedbacks are really good.
So they can go check it out. I'll make sure I put the link in there.
Yeah,
And if I'm not sure if it's still on, but the flow at work training that also I did, it's part of a study. So you're currently also getting evidence that it's
oh yes,
working. So maybe on that one concretely, if people are keen,
yeah.
when's the next cohort or was there anything practical that people need to know about it?
Yeah, we have wonderful collaborations with the academic world, with the University of Geneva or University of Vaud, Neuchâtel, and also Université Savoie-Mont-Blanc. And we are in the process of, doing this study and validating this training and the impact on the training. And so the next cohort will start in October. And
Great.
I invite you, yeah, the best is to look it up and go on the website. And we have activities in English and in French, both.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And also to all listeners, feel free to also reach out to me. I've done it. I can also be an advocate of that great work that's been changing my life little by little. And
Yeah.
yeah, thanks so much for taking your time, Jean-Philippe.
Yes,
And
thank
yeah,
you.
have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you so much, Maggie.
Okay,
You too.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was it for today. Thanks for listening. And if you like this, subscribe and share it with anybody who might benefit from it too. And remember, leadership isn't a title, it's a mindset. And when you realign with what matters most to you and take one intentional step, you create ripples at work, at home, and in how you live. So pause, breathe, and begin. Because change always starts from within and with one little step. So what ripple are you creating today? Bye for now and see you next time.